welcome to all of you. It's a prestigious event, so without much further ado, I'll get started. So I actually want to take the first few slides to kind of backtrack in time a little bit as to why IoT is now relevant, what has kind of caused it to move forward. Again, we'll be aware of some of the original inventions, if you will, around water and steam in terms of powering environments, powering systems. We then move on from there in terms of actually having power itself, in terms of electricity. From electricity, we moved into informational technology systems with electricity to born out new systems, new business processes. And what has fundamentally changed is the way that we now look at digitalization, that we've now moved into a cyber-connected world. And what's interesting about this slide, you'll see at the bottom right-hand corner, we talk about this is what's happening today, but this slide was created back in 2011. Now, for many of you in the industrial age, coming from machinery factory floors, you'll know that sensor information has been placed on machine equipment for many, many years now. That isn't new. What we are seeing, however, is a rise in the global value of that data. Again, I'm not going to cite all the numbers on this slide, but you look to the far right-hand side, you'll see that this is up in the quadrant of multiple trillions of US dollars in terms of this currency. This is the value that's at stake. This is the value that each and every one of us in this room has an opportunity to take a piece of. And what I want to talk about with you today is actually how do you engage with that? How do we look to change the processes that we're familiar with, the traditional ERP systems? And by the way, for those of you that aren't familiar with SAP, we're kind of the world's largest business applications provider, have been for several years now. So we have a good idea of understanding workflow, people, and process. We have a good idea of understanding from the Fortune 500 companies what's on their minds as how they integrate new systems, new business models. So you have to reimagine your business, you have to transform your business to provide new services. In order to do that, you have to look at the systems that you have today. You have to take those systems and remodel those systems, re-engage them to this 21st century. You also have to look at your partners, OEMs, distributors, whatever channel you sell your products and services, help them to reimagine themselves. Because ultimately, they're adding value to your bottom line and helping you to improve your economy. And with that, you can start to now look at where machine data and social media data start to intersect. And just a quick quote here. I'm not sure if you were aware of the Associated Press. Back in 2003, they have a Twitter account in New York that was hacked. An erroneous tweet was placed on there that cited the explosion at the White House, President Obama injured. Well, what happens next? Well, thousands of points are dropped off the Dow Jones Index and the Standard & Poor's Index, wiping billions off the global stock market. The question you should be asking yourselves, what does social media tweet have anything to do with financial services? The reality is that they've been using that data for many, many years to get social sentiment on news and article feeds. When we as organizations, such as SAP and many others in this room as vendors, we announce our quarter-end stock value and earnings, that has a knock-on effect on how you buy and sell trades. So traders have been doing this for many years, manually. They've now moved that to algorithmic trading so that the machine does it for them in nanoseconds. So the quicker I can get to the trade, the more money I'm likely to make. But what does that really mean for the Internet of Things? Well, the Internet of Things has many components to it, many factors to it, many tenants. We have mobile computing. We have social media, as I've just mentioned. I don't think there's anyone in here that doesn't have some form of an email account. Who's under 30 that uses Facebook? Or under 12 that uses Facebook? I think it's now considered for the older generation Facebook, and they've moved more to Instagram. But these are components that when you merge that data together with machine data, machine-to-machine data, cognitive learning, device data, you now start to get a true understanding on how your business performs. And ultimately start to look at changing your business. Big data has been around for a while. It's not new. But the way that we handle that big data and deal with that big data from a point of view analytics, being able to predict and be prescriptive. And my next few slides now are going to start walking us through some examples of what that means for the business. Again, how do we reimagine business? How do we look at our customers, vendors, supplier relationships, and help them to reimagine their business based upon this new age of data? So the Internet of Things, just to cite some numbers for you, regardless of whether you listen to the analysts or vendors such as ourselves, there's going to be a lot of data there by the year of 2020. 75 billion, I think, is the number quoted on this slide. Every one of us in this room is connected today via our mobile device. For those of you that do running, training, and wear Fitbit devices that monitor your heart rate, the number of steps that you take, you are connected. So I often think of us as being machines ourselves. As a human being, we can be a machine if we're connected. I'm sure there'll come a time when sensors will be placed on us, either artificially through clothing or directly through a patch being placed on us or a microchip implanted into us. So we look at this scenario in terms of sport. We have a company called Under Armour that we're working with extensively that now puts sensors into their athletic clothing. So it tells prime athletes how they are training in real time. It will tell the average jogger or runner when you're wearing your trainers whether you actually have them at the optimum tread on the bottom of the shoe. Many of us will run and train and will think, I've had these trainers for 2-3 years, there's no need to change them. But at the end of the day, that's not the optimum way that we are actually getting the benefit from those shoes. Not only that, data is being fed back to Under Armour in this example, where they can actually track the use and the wear of their products whilst being used by the consumer. Now again, data privacy, data policies have a huge role to play in this, and it will be an opt-in or opt-out type of scenario. The digital economy is connected. We all know that. We kind of get that. We kind of heard of the age of economies with Bitcoin. That's still yet to take its shape and actually have more of a global outreach, but it's getting there. So we actually start moving to more of a paperless society, where everything we do is now digitalized. So if you look at this example, it could be a tire manufacturer as an example that places sensors on their tires. So they know exactly how much wear and tear, how much tread depth is left, the pressurization, the PSI that's placed on that tire, and feeds that back into a local service repair shop. That in turn can feed information when it's collated with all of the sensor data that's coming from every single tire that's out there, that can predict when it's about to fail and inform the driver before failure, inform the driver to either pull over or make their way to the nearest service station. These are new business models that are working today. This isn't new. We've all seen these in the streets of London by Barclays, I'm sure. The Uber model is a prime example of this. We want shared services, but I also want those services to be personalized somehow. I want to feel special. Now, I'll give you a prime example. Just last week, I was in New York. I'm based in New York, by the way. And I text my brother, who's based in the UK, to say, hey, I'm going to be in the UK this week. Do you want to meet up? Yes, that's fine. What you've been up to, et cetera, et cetera. Cut a long story short, I've just purchased a new mobile phone. Oh, great. What deal did you get? He sends me the detail of the deals. As soon as I get back to the UK, I think, I need that same deal. Let me ring up my service provider. Kind of another long story, very short. They send me out a new iPhone 6. I then find out I can get a better deal online. So I ring them back up and say, I want to return the phone because I can get a better deal online. Well, okay, we can't talk to you about a better deal until we receive the phone back that we just sent to you. Is that an optimum level of service? You can't even talk to me until you receive the phone back. So I had to ship the phone back, wait for 5 days for it to be processed through their return system before I could phone them back up to find out what kind of level of service I can get for an upgrade. Only to find that they will then send me another phone out, which is the exact same identical model to the one that I just had. So there's room for improvements there. And it's in every single industry. But I want it personalized for myself, like the Uber model. I want to feel as though I'm special. We all do. And I'm willing to pay for that service. Some of the services can be offered for free. But at the said time, we as suppliers, in this case a utility company, I want to cut out the middleman to improve the level of service that I'm offering to you. So in terms of smart meter reading, why should I actually send out a service operator or an engineer just to go and read digits off a meter when I can get that meter to send me the information electronically? That's what we mean by cutting out the middleman. That's reducing the overhead I have in terms of human resources going out there and physically checking a device. Let the device talk to me. Let me then provide real-time billing to the consumer. Let me then provide an insight as to how they're using electricity in their home. Every single kettle or power point that's plugged in, I can provide real-time information via an iPhone or Android app that will remotely control the power usage in my home. And I'm sure there's vendors here today that are actually installing these. We have British Gas, we have E.ON, we have other energy companies, utility companies that are already doing this. Again, this isn't new, but it's the new age of what we see for the Internet of Things. But the Internet of Things, in terms of the economy that we look at, is transforming lives. It's not just from a service standpoint, it's also from a health standpoint. And I was fortunate enough to present at a life sciences conference last week, and they're doing some phenomenal things in life sciences. I mentioned before about putting a patch on your body that can sense how your blood pressure is, your heart rate. Now, if I'm on special medication under clinical trials, that's important information for me to have as the prescriber of that treatment or that drug in real time. It's pointless me knowing about that information after there's been some severe illness with the patient. Doing things like genome DNA testing for cancer treatment. Again, I can track individual patients and have personalized care that's very prescriptive to their own specific illnesses. This is what Internet of Things means to me. It's what it means to my company, SAP. We don't just look at it as a device, we look at the data that we can gain from that device or that sensor and augment that data with business data. I mentioned about transforming lives. We're also transforming societies. See, if you look at smart cities, wouldn't it be nice to have a service that I don't have to pay for, such as garbage collection? I'm sure we all pay our taxes here. Well, personally, I don't because I live in New York, but I'm sure everybody else pays their taxes on time and are very pleased with the services they get for their taxes. Probably not. You want them more personalized, more prescriptive to yourself. Well, governments and cities around the world are now taking that on board and building out solutions, products, and services to cater for you, the consumer, or you and I as the consumer. Energy usage. How many cars are actually going in for emissions coming out of the exhaust? Let's reduce that. Have a greener, sustainable society. What about services in terms of transport? How can I have a more effective transport system that offers a higher rate of consumer service? For those of you in the UK, you're going to have an awful time in the next few months because you're going to get the dreaded leaves on track and therefore your train's like 15 hours late. Let's try and avoid that. So if I'm British Rail, if I'm Virgin Rail, I want to avoid things like that. We have well-known services that we look at as well in terms of just-in-time services. It extends different benefits, particularly in transportation and logistics. We see a picture of an airline. If you look at Boeing as an example, I was talking to one of their executives a few months ago who informed me that every time a plane takes off, when it lands, each engine on that plane generates 2 terabytes of data. 2 terabytes of data. What do I do with that data? How do I manage it? Firstly, how do I capture it? How do I store it? How do I analyze it? These are all the components of big data. But that's machine data coming from that particular piece of equipment, that engine. I have to harness that data and merge that data to understand the logistics of the cabin crew, the logistics of the ground crew for refueling, for de-icing as we're now coming up into the winter months. All of this has to be scheduled, looking at the passenger manifesto and so forth. So a couple of examples for you, real-life examples. This is based upon the Hamburg Port Authority, one of our established customers out of Germany. And the quote that they provided to myself and some of our executives is that we're going to grow our business in terms of inbound, outbound traffic, of cargo coming into the port and being transported out by lorries or tractor trailers, articulated trucks, by as much as 18 to 20% in the next 2 years. So I'm going to grow the business by at least a fifth in the next 2 years. But here's my challenge. I can't grow the physical plot of the port, the physical footprint of the port. That cannot grow. So I need to have a more optimized way of how I control both traffic coming in and traffic going out, being able to tag every single container, every single ship, every single truck, lorry, every single transportation carrier that's on the port itself to understand when's the optimal time that when a ship docks, I actually have the driver there waiting, as opposed to having the driver coming and wait and clogging and causing congestion in the port itself. So they built a system with us at SAP and some of our partners, and it's important to note that no end-to-end platform is going to consist of one vendor. If you truly want to capture data from everywhere and everything at any time on any device, you have to partner. Now, whether you speak to one vendor that has all the other partnerships sorted out themselves, or you speak to multiple vendors directly, that's what you're going to have to do. And that's what we did in this case. We spoke with T-Systems, utilizing their telecommunications protocol. We spoke with some system integrators to help us implement, alongside with our custom development team, because this was a pioneering thing that we did with the Port of Hamburg, that we now extend into other ports around the globe. I mentioned before about transportation and trains, and just looking at this in terms of how do I offer a better, efficient service. Leaves on the track is just one issue. Service and maintenance are fundamental issues for train companies, train service providers. When's the optimal time to take a train out of service so I can maintain it? The last thing I want is to have a train failure when I have it full of either cargo or people or cattle, whatever I'm transporting. So again, we worked with Trenitalia, with our custom development team. Again, this was pioneering in their world and pioneering in the world of SAP. We collaborated together with them, doing co-innovation. We put sensors on their tracks. We put sensors on the trucks. We put sensors on each of the carriages. We put sensors on the engines. I think you can get the picture. We put sensors on everything and tracked all that information in real time, so that they can actually now have planned downtime as opposed to unplanned downtime. They can actually now start predicting when trains will arrive and have them arrive on time, raising a higher level of customer satisfaction and customer service, which ultimately, for first-class travel passengers, they can look to increase that fee by guaranteeing service delivery. Now, I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg with some of these use cases. Time doesn't permit to get into them in detail, but I wanted to give you a flavor here of what Internet of Things, in terms of machine-to-machine data, means for this new evolving world around the fourth revolution, the industrial internet revolution, or evolution. A power company, again, in this case, this was based out of Europe, a company called Alianda. How do they optimize their energy grid that provides services, electricity to the commercial businesses and the domestic home? How do they make their services more green? How do they put sensors on every single windmill, whether it's electronic or air-assisted, and track that in real time to understand their grid management and where they can increase power, decrease power. Again, in some countries during the summer months, you're going to have a high input of electricity requirements because you have air conditioning units going. So how do I manage that? How do I control that? For you as businesses that have buildings in multiple locations, how do you do energy management for that building? How do you buy your power ahead of time on the commodity markets that's going to be convenient and conducive for you, determining how much power you use in a specific building? So we have smart building initiatives with several of our partners, such as Cisco, such as Intel, IBM, and others, where we can actually monitor a thermostat in an individual room. I can sense how many people are in that room, and I can determine whether to lower the heating, the cooling, or raise the heating or the cooling. And I'm sure we have other speakers today, I think from SmartThings, who will talk to you about the connected home. Again, I can control door locks, thermostat, heating, garage doors, windows from my mobile device. This is what Internet of Things means, a higher level of service. So I'd encourage you all to kind of embrace this market. As I said, it's not new. If you haven't already started on this journey, you're already late. Firms have been doing this for many, many years. And when I talk to executives of high-profile companies, I explain to them that same statement. If you haven't started, you're already late. And what they're asking for now is, how do they activate this? How do they get started? How do they connect? And once they've connected, how can they leapfrog the competition? I don't just want to catch up, because in many respects, that competition has actually already gone further advanced, even if I start today. So I have to transform my business now to add value. I have to adjust. I have to come up with new business models, new thought processes, new ideas. And there's plenty of resources out there that can help you with that. We have our own group of industry value engineers. We have our own group of specialized custom development that we do for co-innovation. I think many of my colleagues are here today. And the real reason around this for SAP is the slide you see in front of you. ERP systems, CRM systems, they've been around for many, many years. That isn't new. But what is new is what you see on the bottom left-hand corner. We can capture data about customers, we can capture data about suppliers, we can capture data about internal employees or external subcontractors. But what we weren't capturing in real time, as the machine generates it, is data from our assets. And what are our assets? Everything that I own is an asset. Even my little dog at home, a Shih Tzu, she's an asset. Quite an expensive one, but she's an asset. She has a microchip. I can track her. We can track everything and anything. But I have to take that data and merge that data with business data, which is what we do at SAP and do with our partners. Because that business data in terms of information technology and operational technology, IT, OT, that's where we see the convergence. That's where we see contextualization being added to the machine data. With machine data, I'm only going to get a sensor ID or a tag ID. I have no idea of when that equipment was purchased, when it was last serviced, what's its health state. I only get that from an asset database or an asset management system in an ERP system. So we have a range of companies here. I'm not going to go into them. We have a booth downstairs, next door, wherever that booth is, that can talk to you exactly about how we do this, not on our own, but with our partners as well, our OEM partners. We also provide our technology from an OEM standpoint. Again, to deliver to you a highly profiled platform. And again, you'll hear this from many of the speakers today. We have platforms, but those platforms have to integrate. Again, I'm not going to labor too much on this slide, but on the left-hand side, we have services. On the right-hand side, we have cloud integration. How do I connect to the device? How do I connect to other clouds? And in the center, how do I process that data for predictive, graphical, text, geospatial type processing, all in real time and being able to manage that data at infinite scale, both in terms of storage at petabytes and both in terms of processing in milliseconds, nanoseconds. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I think I'm right on time, just about, right, Matt? Pretty close. But just to remind you with this final slide, think about your businesses. Whether you're a vendor, whether you're a supplier, whether you're a customer, think about how you're going to activate, how you're going to connect, how you're going to make value of that data, how you're going to transform your business, and ultimately, how do you create new business models. So thank you all very much for your time. It was a privilege and honor to have presented, and Matt, I'll hand back over to you.